Welcome back to another episode of the Links Golf Podcast. I'm Al Lunsford, digital editor for Links, joined by my co-host Joe Passoff. Today's conversation, Joe, we kind of stirred around some thoughts and come up with something I think we've both sort of talked about before in different ways. You mentioned you've done some pieces about sister courses in the past. It sort of occurred to me that a lot of places there's a big main draw, and then the courses that play the second fiddle, if you will, to use a figure of speech, just sort of a supporting role to the the main the main character at a lot of these places. And to me, it was like some jumped out at me right away. Others, it was like, well, there are some resorts that and destinations that there's not really. It's more of an ensemble than it is someone leading the solo out there. But when you approach the idea of second fiddle courses, were there some that you just immediately ruled out because you couldn't make a decision? That's kind of how I felt.
Yeah, I think this is a fun topic, no matter how it comes up, when or why. That there were some obvious choices for me, but I think when you hit on the final topic, which was our favorite second fiddle courses, as opposed to the best necessarily. Now, some of these are going to be terrific golf courses in their own right, but in looking for favorites, I think that puts a little more emotion into play where you think about, I mean, Pinehurst is the best example. No question about it. Pinehurst number two is the leading actor well, we don't even say actress anymore, the leading actor on that stage. Everybody wants to play it, and for obvious reasons. But gosh, you have so many supporting players that are awesome now in their own right. And which do you pick as the second fiddle? You can't really do that now.
Yeah.
They're all unique and great in their own way, separate and apart from number two. But for best supporting actor or actress, they are right there. And there are other places where, again, you can make the case with Bandon Dunes. Pacific Dunes may lead most of the rankings, but not in everybody's mind. That's what's awesome about Bandon Dunes is that a lot of different people have a different favorite at Bandon Dunes, and whatever course you wind up on, you're not disappointed. They're all so good, so highly ranked, and different from each other in enough ways that you can't really call them supporting versus, the leading actor.
Yeah, that I was gonna say a place like that is perfect because, right, Pacific Dunes is the highest in most rankings. I think that's pretty much the consensus there, but it's not like it's head and shoulders above uh, any of those. And it's certainly for a lot of people who go and play there, it's not the star of the show. Oftentimes, it's sort of a personal preference there. Um, Stream Song was another one where I'm like, all those courses are so good. Like, how do you say that one is the first, second, third? How do you determine that order? It's sort of up to the person to decide.
You're absolutely right. And Gil Hance made a very funny, accurate comment about the court he did there, the black. And he said, I get a fair number of comments. He said that it's the best or the worst. There doesn't seem to be any in between with the black. And again, what a fun problem to have if you're a guest at Stream Song and like, okay, I mean, this if you depending on what you like and what your preferences are, the black could stand out and stand above. And yet, in many other cases, I'd rather do the red and the blue ahead of the black. So, David Kidd will soon complicate that situation with what promises to be another great course. But that's the whole idea behind this topic today, second fiddles. And we have some courses I think we're going to talk about today that are legitimate second fiddles for one reason or another, but still really resonate with each of us.
Yeah, and like you said, David McClay Kid course at Stream Song further complicates things. He's doing another course at Gamble Sands. We'll see how that shakes out, and if one is going to be the lead and one's just kind of the other one there. I don't get the feeling that that's the case, by the way. I think both will be spectacular there. And then Sand Valley has so much going on. They just announced another course, a 12-hole course called the Commons, which is sort of that, not a par three course, but it's only 12 holes. It has a mix of par fours, fives, and threes. Um, so, in taking all of that into consideration, those are not ones that we're going to talk about in the context of our favorite picks today. But here is what we are going to talk about. Do you want to maybe start, Joe? I feel like my number one is kind of the best example that comes to maybe either of our minds. And here's a hint for you right here on my hat.
Well, you teed yourself up beautifully, Al, but I'm happy to start.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. Um, with three choices, again, these are favorite second fiddle courses as opposed to necessarily the best. But in my first case, I'm going to go with a very popular public access 36 hole layout in near Phoenix, Scottsdale, out in my home turf of Arizona. And the course I want to talk about today is the Cholla course at Weekapaw Golf Club. So, okay, Cholla. For starters, back Eastern folks, not even sure how to pronounce when they see it spelled Cholla, and it's a type of cactus that we have, reasonably benign, but there are some that whose needles will jump up and bite you if you're not careful, and that includes this golf course, the Cholla Golf Course. So, why is it my favorite second fiddle golf course? Okay, because it was built in 2001, designed by former Nicholas associate Scott Miller, and ruled the roost. It was very popular and a top 100 public. And then, lo and behold, December of 2006 rolls around 5 years later, and Bill Coore and Ben Crenshaw opened their new course called Saguaro at Weekapaw. Well, what happens when Bill Coore and Ben Crenshaw come into the neighborhood? They kind of suck the air out of the room because inevitably their designs are so popular, so well regarded by the purists, by the people who rank courses, the architecture geeks, and and that is exactly what's happened over the last 20 years, I think, at Weekapaw, because Saguaro, when you see the various public course rankings or best in state rankings, Saguaro inevitably comes ahead of Cholla. And in some cases, Cholla is not even on the list. It's as if it's just a little bit of a diss to the fact that Scott Miller isn't Bill Coore, Ben Crenshaw, or one of the modern greats among the minimalists. So I say that because both formally and informally, preferences are actually split 50-50 on which course is better out there or which course you like better as far as how that goes. So, what are the differences in the two? Scott Miller's Cholla, built earlier, is a little more of what we came to know as classic target golf. So there's few more forced carries. There's like three split fairway holes where you've got some interesting decisions to make off the tee. Okay, can I hit it far enough and straight enough to hit this fairway? On the one hand, like at 18, where a straight drive to the safe area, if you hit it too far, might find a pond. But the longer area that you got to carry to the left is kind of fun because if you make that happen, it's a very easy approach to the green. There's another hole out there on Weekapaw Cholla, the seventh, which is tougher to figure out because there's a whole tree and shrub and rock complex in the middle of that fairway. And you say, well, all right, what happens if I go left or right? Interesting. That's your call because if you go to the right, it's a farther approach shot, but it's open. If you go to the left of this big complex in the middle of the divided fairway, it's a shorter approach, but you're coming in over bunkers. So kind of pick your poison. Which do you like? I think those options are a lot of fun. I think there's more dramatic and more memorable holes on Cholla. I really do. So then why are there folks that love Saguaro so much? Because Ben and Bill crafted a much more old world design where ground contours made a big difference as you were coming into the green or chipping around the green. In addition, they routed the next tee close to the previous green so that it made it very walkable. And then finally, whereas Cholla kind of saddled the fairways. So if you slice or hook, you got a chance that that uprise at the edge of the fairway will hold your ball in. Well, Coeur Crenshaw's fairways dip down and ease off, melt into the desert. But the fairways themselves are so wide that you only have yourself to blame if you actually find the fairway off the tee at the Saguaro course by Coeur Crenshaw. So, as a place to walk, if you like to walk, or if you haven't played all winter and you get off the plane and this is your first course, or you're prone to some wildness or playing with a little bit of a lesser player, Saguaro's the easy pick. But as between the two, just hold on. Just because it's Scott Miller doesn't mean it's an inferior golf course. And he's done some great work over the years elsewhere, including the famous Island Green course in Idaho, Coeur d'Alene. So, man, that's my easy number one choice for favorite second fiddle golf course, Weekapaw Cholla.
Fair point to not just look at the and play the name game and say, Coeur Crenshaw automatically is going to be the better course or the more fun course that you play when you go to Weekapaw. It's my favorite 36 holes in Arizona that I've gotten the chance to experience. I love the fact that Cholla starts with a risk reward tipping out at 351 yards, par four. Uh, go for it right out of the gate if you'd like to. I just loved that start to that course. It
Yeah,
really
with an elevated
kicks
tee.
it
I
off.
mean, a decent hitter can definitely get home.
Yeah. Great choice, Joe. Weekapaw is I'm a big fan, and yeah, it may be a second fiddle to most, but go out there and decide for yourself when you go see it. That leads me to my first choice. We alluded to it. I gave some hints based on my hat, which is the flag for Pebble Beach Golf Links. And so the second fiddle that most would consider to be the second fiddle to Pebble Beach anywhere else in the world, if it's not part of Pebble Beach Resorts and it's on its own somewhere, it's no, second fiddle to basically none, and that's Spyglass Hill. 1966, Robert Trent Jones Sr. Joe, I want to do this as maybe an article. Maybe it's something I give you to do as an assignment, perhaps. I want to do like an ultimate 18 at Pebble Beach Resorts and go hole by hole and which course has the best first, second, third hole. I bring that up because I think the first hole at Spyglass is the best first hole at Pebble Beach Resorts, um, by far. And I don't think it's really close. Spanish Bay is pretty good. Par five, it's very straightforward. It plays out towards the ocean. It's beautiful, yes, but it doesn't come close to touching that first hole at Spyglass, in my opinion. Nicknamed Treasure Island. Oh, by the way, all the holes are named after things in the book Treasure Island. Um, big par five sweeping downhill. You can't come out of this chute next to the tiny clubhouse right there at Spyglass, and it sort of just opens up, and then you have these first five holes that are brilliant. Some have called them Pine Valley by the Sea, and in terms of those first five, then you sort of duck into the cypress forest that they say was deliberately designed to mimic Augusta National. So, and you do get that sense as you're winding through this coastal forest. This is what uh, an LA Times columnist named Jim Murray, who you may be familiar with, Joe, said about Spyglass Hill in 1967. It's a 300-acre unplayable lie. If it were human, Spyglass would have a knife in its teeth, a patch on its eye, a ring in its ear, tobacco in its beard, and a blunderbuss in its hand. I love every unplayable inch of it. It's the
Uh,
hardest course at Pebble Beach Resorts by far. It and safe to say he captured that brilliantly in that quote. Um, I just love it. I mean, the fourth hole is one of the craziest great holes you'll play anywhere. A lot has to do with that, almost 100-foot long green that's about 8 feet wide that you play into on the par four fourth. Um, it's spectacular, especially those first five. Um, Enchanting in its last 13. I think it's easily my favorite second fiddle, and that's because it's right next to Pebble Beach, which everyone knows and generally loves, and for reasons that we all know about. Um, but Spyglass is wonderful. It's up there. If Pebble didn't have the mystique and the history that it does, I would be hard pressed and almost like Spyglass just as much.
Al, if we were picking our favorite and our best second fiddle, no question that Spyglass Hill would be my choice. I have been a huge fan of Spyglass since I first played it. Ready? In 1980. And of course, that was a memorable round for me for the golf course itself. I was playing with my best friend from high school and Brad Schleier. Brad, a little press for you right here. But we got paired randomly that day with two brothers. One was named. No, I'm not sure I need to mention the name, but the other brother was named Tom Doak. And that is my first introduction to Tom Doak, and watched and observed a very young, skinny guy, freshman in college, running around Spyglass taking pictures and, seeing almost through his eyes, couldn't help it, kind of, look what he was looking at. If if there are critics through the years of Spyglass, they fall into two camps. One, which still beats this drum, is that maybe Robert Trent Jones Sr. didn't get the most out of routing the golf course because it's so sectionalized. You have those Pine Valley-like holes in the sand to start, and then you never go back to the ocean. You just go to the forest, and that's where you spend your time. Whereas Pebble goes in and out and in and out, and Cypress Point does the same. Okay, I mean, you can make that point, but I don't think that takes away from the overall satisfaction of the quality of the golf holes. And I think the other criticism for years, which is now kind of just about gone, is that where Spyglass was laid out in the forest, drainage was an issue. And it was an issue for 40, maybe 50 years. Well, modern technology and some money has gotten that right. And as you can see by some bonus coverage this year at the AT&T, and the guys playing, the top players playing Spyglass on Thursday, the ball's rolling out. It's playing exactly like it was intended to. It doesn't flatter everybody's game because there's a lot of elevated greens. and some fairways like at 8 that can't the other direction, even though the hole's going left, the fairway can't right. I mean, you got to kind of work your ball, play the ball off different stances. And when the weather is up, it can play really, really long and tough. But you take those 4 par 3s as a quartet, one of the best in all of golf, and continue on and just say, there's a lot of folks who quietly will whisper, that's the best course on the Monterey Peninsula. So, okay, it's not my pick for the best, but I love it and respect it. And even if it does get ranked 12th in the country or 10th or 15th among the top public courses, it's still a second fiddle.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. That 15th par three, people maybe remember from the tournament just a few weeks back. It's the one that Rory dunked a hole in one on. Um, so that was a good, cool moment. And we'll see what happens in 2026 and then the spring of 27 when the links at Spanish Bay reopens after a renovation by Gil Hands and Jim Wagner and Hands Golf Course Design. Will there be a new second fiddle in town? We'll see what happens. Joe, your next favorite second fiddle.
Okay, next favorite on my list was very appropriate for its absence this past week, and that is the North Course at Torrey Pines. So, what we had at the Genesis, and really, I mean, another fabulous tournament, uh, is that the Genesis was played all 4 rounds on Torrey Pines South, just as the U.S. Open of 2008 and 2021 was. But when the Farmers Tournament takes place, as it did a few weeks ago, before that, they alternate for the first 2 rounds, the North and the South, just to get players moving around, a bigger field, and then they make the cut, and it's the South only on the weekend. Well, for many, many years, up until basically 2017, the North Course was not only a second fiddle, but second rate in terms of the challenge and the design variety and that sort of thing. It was roughly for a time 300 to 400 yards shorter than the South, and then Reese Jones came in ahead of the 2000 2001 and added a bunch of length to the South, and then a bunch more length, and and eventually it measured 7,800 yards. So again, if you tune in to any digital content, social media, you know that there are critics of the South Course because perhaps it didn't take full advantage of the coastal site or because of some of the repetitive shot values, but it just plays like a U.S. Open course. And when the weather is up, I mean, under par is a really good score. And with today's equipment and feedback and physical conditioning and all that other stuff, it's very hard to do to make a fair championship golf course play to where par is a good score. Credit and all credit to Torrey Pines South for achieving that. Okay, well, it doesn't mean that you and I have to like it, love it, prefer it. For instance, I love being in that setting, but the South is just too much course for me at this point in my life. Even moving up a couple sets of tees with the rough and just the shot demands. So then we turn to the North, and late in 2016, Tom Weiskopf opened a redesigned North Course using almost all the same corridors, but he added right around 300 yards to it. Most importantly, he redid all the greens to take them away from their pure muni, nothing going on almost any of them, into a set of very interestingly contoured putting surfaces. And Weiskopf was not over the top. He never was on any of his courses, whether he worked with Jay Morrish or he did it solo with Phil Smith. Um, the North is great because for regular public play, there are some accessible spots on those greens that can get play moving around. You feel like you can make some birdie putts or get up and down. But for the pros, there's enough sections in those greens that for the one round of year they're going to see it, they can tuck them in those places and make them have to play some real golf to have a chance at a birdie. So in the last few years, the North has only played 2 shots easier than the South, which means it's pretty tough in its own right. But Weiskopf flipped the nines, which means you get these two great ocean holes, 15 and 16, near the end of the round. You get the redesigned seventh, which is a drivable par four and doable. And nobody built drivable par fours better than Weiskopf. And even though the course now stretches 72 and a half from the tips, I just think there's more variety, more fun to be had with ostensibly better views, or at least a little better, and the fun that you can have on and around the greens. So kudos. I will defend the South for what it is as just a fair, great championship test of golf. But the North is a worthy second fiddle in my mind.
Fair enough. I don't have a ton to add. I never been to Torrey Pines. I don't know much about it. I do know it's one of the best sites for public golf in the country, and just hanging on top of the cliffs in La Jolla like that, um, absolutely stunning. So it doesn't take a ton of effort for it to be a place you want to go play, and we know the brute that is Torrey Pines South, and we get to see the North Course, like you said, during the Farmers. It's a worthy second fiddle, I would say, to complement
Yeah, I mean,
that big championship course.
I'll throw in one more comment I could have used just last year. Keegan Bradley told Golf Digest uh, it used to be you would go to the North Course and shoot really low scores. But now the North Course, in some ways, is just as tough. It's tricky, and he added it's got some crazy greens.
Mm.
Keegan, I don't necessarily agree with crazy, but it's got some hole locations that will make it much more difficult than it used to be. And when they're running at fairly normal speeds, it's a fun challenge for the regular guys like me that play there.
Mm. Good.
Al, what's next in as far as the orchestra goes? Your second fiddle.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the home of Lynx magazine. That's Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, and the big dog is obviously Harbor Town Golf Links. Pete Dye, Jack Nicklaus host uh, the RBC Heritage every single year. We know it well. There are two other courses there at the Sea Pines Resort that don't get quite the shine that Harbor Town does. One of them is Heron Point, another Pete Dye design that has a lot of similarities, a lot of water, kind of funky. There's a really, really cool hole with this green, sort of like there is a short par four. I can't remember exactly what number it is on the back nine at Harbor Town, where it's got this sort of island green in the sand. They've got a similar hole there at Heron Point
Yeah,
that plays that
13 at
way.
Harbor Town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But it's a par three at Heron Point with a sort of the same look from a green. But I actually prefer, and this is my favorite course on Hilton Head. I've said it before, Atlantic Dunes by Davis Love, which is a redo of the original Ocean course on Hilton Head, the first golf course on the island that is now known as the Golf Island, with all of these fantastic public and private courses that you can play. But the Tar Heel Davis Love the third came in with his brother. I think this was 2016 that they came in and revamped and renamed this course Atlantic Dunes. It's got plenty of water in its own right. that doesn't intrude quite as much as what you get on Heron Point. Um, but it's there and makes you think. I think it really shines once you get to the ninth hole, which is this big par five and a green that is bordered by water and the big bulkheads. And from then on, it's a really fantastic track. It's got some nods to classic golf architecture. There's a punch bowl style green early in the front nine. There is, let's see, I think it is the eighth hole. No, let's see. The sixth hole. It's a par four with the principal's nose bunkers. And then later on in the round, it's the 16th hole. They've got a lion's mouth style green. But before you get there, you got a good par three drop shot over a little bit of water on the 10th. Get to a drivable par three or drivable par four at the 11th hole. Um, the postcard hole is the 15th, a par three that plays on the ocean effectively. It's one of the only oceanside golf holes, true oceanside golf holes on the entirety of Hilton Head Island, is this 15th. And inevitably, I call it the postcard because that's most of the pictures that you see. That's the one, that's their highlight hole. But it's a really nice finish there. The par five before it. Then you got that par three, short par four with the lion's mouth. And then a couple of big fours to end it. And I have just so enjoyed playing this course. It doesn't require you to pick and play targets like Harbor Town does, like Heron Point does as much. I mean, you have to have control of your golf ball so you don't end up losing several sleeves, but it's a little bit milder and immaculately conditioned. Everything that the Sea Pines Resort does is maintained to the highest standards. So you're getting a good round of golf in. It's a little friendlier and fun and nice nods to the classic courses in the game. So love Atlantic Dunes as a second fiddle to Harbor Town.
Al, this is almost the dictionary definition in terms of second fiddle golf courses, because no matter how much Atlantic Dunes shouts its virtues, hey, we're here, we're around. I mean, yeah, everybody wants to talk about and play Harbor Town.
Mm-hmm.
Again, PGA Tour venue for 6 decades, whatever it's been. Pete Dye, Jack Nicklaus. I get it. I get it. I get it. But I mean, you've got to play a few other places during your vacation there. And Atlantic Dunes is such an interesting proposition. So I can tell you, I haven't played the finished version yet. I was there when the Love Design team was remolding the features. All the grass was gone, and here's what we're doing, and here's what the plan is. So I had a pretty good idea of where things were headed, and love the idea. You can back me up since you've played it, of making it fit its setting better as a true coastal course. I know that they were kind of reestablishing or even creating a little bit of sand dune movement to the course, seaside grasses and shrubs, expanding the green sizes a little bit for modern resort play, and then fine tuning the Ocean 15th par three. I did play its predecessor in 1976. Yes, as a very young man with my sister Lori, my father Eddie, and it was $12. Yes, $12 to play that golf course in 1976. And we had to treasure our time because, as my famous story goes, at least famous in my family, we were mostly tennis players, and Dad would not spring for us to play Harbor Town, even though my sister and I badly wanted to, but he would not pay $1 a hole to play golf. $18 then to play Harbor Town. So we had to be content with the Ocean course, now known as Atlantic Dunes, and And from your description and everything I saw on the way, it would be a very worthy golf course to play on any trip to Hilton Head.
Yeah, they added in like the coquina shell accents and the native scrub. So I'm the reverse of you. I never saw it before when it wasn't Atlantic Dunes already. So I'm kind of just seeing the finished product, but it does fit beautifully in that low country setting. I do believe the green fee has climbed a little bit, Joe, since you
Oh,
last played it. So just a fair warning there, but
uh,
a lovely day nonetheless. Okay, what's the last one for you?
all right, Al. I'm going to go to the Midwest for this one and break up the geography a little bit. And you'll probably understand this as soon as I say it, but I'm picking as my final second fiddle choice the Irish course at Whistling Straits. So, okay, what's the deal with the Irish course? Um, Whistling Straits, we all know, is one of the finest, in some people's minds, the finest, single finest resort in North America for golf. Four incredible championship golf courses, tournament worthy, challenging, scenic, plus the new Bath short course, a couple of years old now. Okay, you already have kind of a second fiddle with Kohler because Black Wolf Run exists 10 minutes away. And that has hosted huge tournaments, US Women's Open. Some say it was some of Pete Dye's best work. The original course at Black Wolf Run, and then a couple of the new holes he's added when they split it into 36. Yeah, all right. But at Whistling Straits itself, this Irish course, okay, um, what's the deal with the Irish course? It does get some love. Okay, it's in the top 100 public courses for both Golf Digest and Golf Week. So it's not as if nobody knows about this or respects it. But Al, have you ever heard anyone in any conversation anywhere you've been say, "Oh gosh, the Irish course is really great. It's awesome. I can't wait to play there." No,
Not,
it's
no.
no. I'm sorry. I'm putting a word in your mouth. No, because it just gets totally dwarfed by the Straits course, which is one of the top five ranked public courses in the country, top 25 overall, major championship venue. So, what else is the deal with the Irish? Well, I think for some, you're going to have to call it a guilty pleasure. Because for starters, Herb Kohler wanted it called the Irish course, and it's about as Irish as Firestone Country Club in Akron. I mean, there's lakes, wetlands. It's basically inland. Um, I mean, it only has a few really good views of Lake Michigan, and that's when you're overlooking the other holes on the Straits course and so forth. So, all right, it's part parkland, it's wetlands, it's flatter terrain. Um, so what is good about it? Actually, what is great about it? And that is if you just take all that stuff off the table. Okay, so maybe it doesn't look exactly like Ballybunion or Lahinch. What does it look like? It's unique. It's mostly inland, but it can feel seaside because you do get breezes off Lake Michigan. It's you're allowed to take a cart there, unlike at Whistling the Straits course, but it's actually an easier walk. It's flatter terrain if you want to do that. It's got some incredible dye touches that you like. Oh yeah, yeah. This is what Pete Dye does and did with long angled carries over huge, vast bunkers, and occasionally over a couple of lakes or wetlands. So all the challenge you could possibly want is going to be in this round. A ton of variety is going to be in this round, from monster par fours and monster par fives. and holy cow, par threes. My favorite is the most Irish looking hole on the course. The 13th is about 183 yards, blind over some dunes. You okay? There you go. There's your nod to Ireland right there. But if we just say for a minute, this isn't links golf. This isn't exactly Ireland. It's still a great public access course that you're going to be amazed at its scenery, its challenge, and in some ways its value because it's significantly less to play than the Straits course. So, yep, it's tough to put a one, two, three, four out there when you're at Whistling Straits slash Black Wolf Run Kohler, but you would really be doing a disservice to yourself if you skipped around at the Irish course at Whistling Straits just because you've heard the chatter and and all of that. So that's my final pick.
That is awesome. I'm so glad you lined that up for me because, as some people know, we're going to Kohler in October this year. That will be my first time. We'll play the river course and the Irish course, river course at Blackwood Run, Irish course, and then the Big Daddy Whistling Straits as well. So I'll get to decide which one is my ultimate second fiddle. But I just kind of always assumed because of the ties to the U.S. Women's Open that Blackcliff Run is the second fiddle. Um, not really recognizing that it's the original course at Blackcliff Run, and now they've got 36 over there, so it doesn't really, boil down to one course that venue or that event was held on. Um, and same to you, to exactly what you said. Like, who talks about the Irish course at Whistling Straits? Like, nobody talks about it. So I am fully prepared to re-listen to everything you said when I get to October and find out just what this place is all about. It looks really cool with the big sand dunes, and I looked at the 13th as you were talking, that blind par three, and that'll be a fun one to play.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's a little more American than its name gives off, um, and it does have some, Parkland aspects to it. Don't denigrate it just because of that. If you just take it as a hole by hole golf course, it is definitely worthy.
For my final pick, this is a place where I don't know, because I was considering, somewhere like Bethpage is kind of interesting because you have Bethpage Black, and then from there it sort of falls off, and you're like, I mean, there's a lot of different choices. Which one is really the one that's second fiddle? I feel the same way about Kiawah, which is where I'm going to go next. I'm staying in South Carolina, where you have the Ocean Course, which is obviously number one there, and then you have what, four other courses to choose from, and it's like, well, they each have their own merits and style of play, and it's not like there's really one that sits above the rest at a clear number two there. But for me, my second fiddle at Kiawah, which I so enjoy, and it has a lot to do with the way it ends as well, is Turtle Point, is Jack Nicklaus's course there at Kiawah. Says Turtle Point epitomizes the Golden Bear's mantra to make the player use his mind ahead of his muscles to control his emotions sufficiently to really think through his options before drawing a club from his bag. It's pretty mild Jack Nicklaus in terms of, yes, it's challenging and you have to play the spots and be able to hit shots, which I like, but it's fairly forgiving for a Jack Nicklaus golf course. And outside of the ocean course, you're not going to get really ocean holes at Kiawah. You'll get a lot of sound holes playing in the interior of the property. But what Turtle Point does so well is that it ends late in the back nine from 14 to 16 with a 3-hole stretch that does open up right on the beach. I mean, you are 20-yard hook away from landing in the sand on the beach. That's right there, and you're staring down towards where the sanctuary is at Kiawah. You can see that in the distance. But the 14th, the par three, then you double back. That kind of opens up once you get to the green and you're on the ocean. So it can get really windy right there. The houses are right on top of you. That on that little par three. The 15th, skinny, short par four, where you just have to hit it straight. I mean, there's really no other option on this hole. Very fun. And then another par three at the 16th. So you get a great taste of beachside golf right there. Whereas, um, other than the ocean course, you're not really going to get that at the resort. You get that here at Turtle Point. Then it sort of doubles back and has a couple par fours to finish there as well. But uh, it's a fun round. It's challenging but fun, and it's it all builds to this sort of finish that at Kiawah. This is the only other place you're going to get those oceanside holes. So I really enjoyed Turtle Point, and they're all great. I mean, there are a bunch of second fiddles there at Kiawah, but this one gets the nod personally for me, and it's just really just because of those final three holes in the last five that finish on the ocean.
Yeah, that was a fun pick, Al, an interesting pick because you definitely have some folks that could call the Tom Fazio course there, Osprey Point, as the truer second fiddle, so to speak. But if you bring the ocean into play, you got to give the nod to Turtle Point. And because Osprey, a wonderful golf course, but doesn't have holes on the ocean. So Turtle Point, I mean, it's funny to think about, and there are some properties we know like this, that it was the star of the show for 10 years. You know, it was built in 1981, and the Ocean Course didn't come along for another 10 years. You know, basically opened kind of right before the Ryder Cup. So, you know, what was Kia selling in those days with that golf course? I mean, it was early Jack Nicklaus. Okay, Jack really didn't start his own company in designing courses till the late 70s. And this was 1981. So although he's come in since, I think maybe 8 or 10 years ago, did a little revision there. But in the early 80s, his style was still a fair number of forced carries, but very calm on and around the greens. It wasn't that sectionalized contouring on the greens or the big mounding around the greens or the steep fall offs. It was pretty calm. The challenge from Turtle Point was keeping the ball in play off the tee. It was relatively narrow for a Jack Nicklaus golf course, with that same low country look, the live oaks and so forth, kind of framing the fairways. And then, yeah, generally you'd have a pond, lake, or bunker or something to carry. But it just, man, I mean, it was more restrained than you think about for Jack. And then now the game's just easier to play with the modern equipment and that kind of thing. And so for that oceanside finish, I marveled at the fact. Now, mind you, I played this golf course. I wasn't a teenager like the other two. I played this golf course first in 1999. And I did marvel at those three oceanside holes, 14, 15, 16, near the end, that are actually closer to the ocean than any hole on the ocean course at Kiawah. So you really do get that whole sunbathers on the beach and the breeze coming in, and the rest of it. And so even though it's a fairly narrow spit of property, you can't help but just be enamored with the fact that you're playing golf on the East Coast with some genuine ocean holes. So, yeah, well, I'm not wearing a cap, but you know what? Here's one from Fields Ranch in Texas from the Omni. I'm going to tip my cap to you, Al, for that choice.
Fair enough. Yeah, it literally is just because of those holes that gets the nod for me. So All right, Joe, you know don't play any instruments, do you? You just talk about golf courses that are fiddles, not actual playing of the fiddle.
Well, as Groucho Marx once remarked to a contestant on You Bet Your Life, he's an oboe player, but he likes to fiddle around.
And with
Okay.
that, I couldn't think of a better way to end this episode. Thanks, Joe. We'll talk to you next time.
Take care, Al.